What's up, guys? It's the Rig Doctor here, Uncle Mason. I'm coming to you today because my buddy Domi in France just bought a brand new Dumble. Well, it's brand new to him, but it was made at some point in the late 80s or early 90s, and he was super excited to get it because he's a huge Robben Ford fan, and he asked me if I would build a rig exactly like one of them that I built for Robben Ford. And it's going to have all the exact same parts, minus a few little changes because his foot switch is slightly different than the foot switch that Robben Ford has, because there is some slight variation between them. Some of them use Canon cables, some of them use DIN cables. So we had to make a few adjustments there. And I'm going to show you how you can build a board exactly like the one that I built for Robben. My name is Mason Marangella. I build rigs for the industry's top professionals. Now I'm teaching guitarists how to build rigs like the pros, with DIY tips, easy mods, and all the tricks of the trade. I am the Rig Doctor. One of the critical things about Robben's board that is very important to know is it's not in stereo, even though there's two outputs on the interface. I rebuilt an interface that's exactly the same way that I built his Robben's. And the important thing to note is that there is a single input and there's a dual output. And it's a splitter, meaning that there is a mono signal that is going to two different amps. And although Robben doesn't always run two amps at the same time, he likes the option to do that if he wants to run his Dumble at the same time as he's running a Super Reverb or another Fender style amp. It just gives you the option of running both. All the resources that we have for this pedal board are all going to be linked in the description. So if you wanted to recreate this thing part for part, you could totally do it. Let's head to the garage. Let's get started. I got the pedal board here. I'm going to link the dimension. I got this from Get Off My Case. You can see that video here if you want to check out the place that I get all my boards built, but this is the same place that built Robben's. And I've taped out a line already to tell me where I'm going to be having all my cables running through, so this just helps me make sure that I avoid that when I'm putting down the pedals. I also talked about us building a custom foot switch, and this corresponds to Robben's Dumble. And I also built him a special cable for it. The reason why is on the original Dumble foot switch, the cable is hardwired to the foot switch, so you can't detach it. This way, when it's on the board, he could remove the cable, so that way there's no risk of it getting kicked, or if a cable goes down, he can replace it. So we're going to get down to wiring the board itself. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. Again, links for everything in the description box. We're also going to be using the G-Lab 9-separated 9-volt power box for the power supply. It is dead quiet and super reliable, and if you have primarily 9-volt pedals, this is a great power supply that will work anywhere in the world. You don't have to change the input voltage. It auto senses whatever that is and then makes the adjustment. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to strategically trace out all the pedals exactly where they need to be so that I know exactly where I need to put the corresponding dual lock Velcro to get everything fastened down onto this pedal board surface. Now on our second row, we're going to be using lifts. I'm not going to mount these themselves. I'm actually going to mount the lifts first, and I've already got Velcro on these guys corresponding with the pedals. First row again, timeline, Zen drive, and then we got the Dumble foot switch. Then we got our interface, which I will properly label Boost, Hall of Fame, and then of course the power supply sitting right there in the corner. I have some 3M dual lock here. I'm going to be putting this on the bottoms and also on the base of the pedal board to secure everything. This is all linked in the description box. As you can see, applying dual lock doesn't mean that you need to cover the entire pedal. On Vertex pedals, I usually use a 3-inch section above and below, and I make sure that I inset it slightly from the screws so that there's still access, and I inset it slightly from the edges because you'll be able to actually see the Velcro if it's not set in a little bit. So this keeps it aesthetically pleasing, makes it look good on the pedal board. I'm going to copy this to all the other pedals, and I'm going to mirror whatever's on the pedal itself on the base so that I can actually just stick the corresponding pieces of dual lock Velcro on this, and then I can just put it down inside the lines that I've already drawn out, which makes it super simple. Like I was saying, You don't need to overdo it on the dual lock. This stuff is so strong that this is going to be plenty to hold it. So I'm actually not putting a whole strip across. I'm just doing a couple of squares in the corners, and I'm putting the mated side, and I'll also link this in the description, of dual lock on this side, because I've already drawn in my lines. So once I take off the backings, I can just place it down directly in the place I've already drawn out, and I can have a perfectly straight line where this is totally lined up with everything else. As you can see, we have everything lined up really nicely, nice straight lines. The next thing I'm going to do is work on the power. I usually go power first, then audio second. I'm going to show you how to do one, and then I'm going to do the rest myself. Now, to route the power in the audio cable, we need two things. We need zip ties, and I'm using a 4-inch, kind of a smaller size zip tie for this. And then I'm also using these tie-down mounts, and they come in big bags like this. I'm going to link both of these in the description so you can get the exact same thing. I'm going to go through, I'm going to show you how to solder the power cables. I'm going to do one for you slowly, and then I'm going to go through and do the rest of them for all these connectors. The power cables that I'm starting off with today are just the provided power cables. Just normal looking power cables that are molded on both ends. I'm going to cut away this color straight end, the white straight end, and I'm going to terminate it with my own connectors, and I'll link all these in the description. So know that this, maybe 6 inches or so is about what I need based on the visual measurement that I've done, kind of laying this cable down on the pedal board. And I always like to sort of measure it out visually before I cut it and make sure there's enough room that's going to clear everything and it's going to reach the connector and it's going to reach the power supply without putting too much stress on the cable. So I've determined this length and I'm just cutting it. So now I'm going to get rid of the white end, which I don't want anymore, and I'm going to re-terminate this connector with my new 2.1 millimeter barrel end. I have my connector end here, and I have the cable that I already cut. I'm going to undo the housing, and I'm going to slide this housing over the cable. This way when I assemble it, I can reattach the housing, and we're good to go. This is a common mistake, though, that people make when they forget to put on the housing on the existing cable. Then I'm going to go ahead and strip it. So I have my wire strippers here. That's 12 gauge opening. I've then exposed these two conductors. I have a black and a red. The red one is going to go to the tip. The black one is going to go to the shield. I'm going to strip away the entire shield completely. So you can see here, I know the color is a little bit dark, but there's no longer any of the black insulation over this. It's just totally exposed wire. I'm going to braid it up a little bit. I'm going to clip it, and I'm just going to tin it, which just is another fancy way of saying I'm going to pre-solder it. So I've pre-soldered that. It's almost the same way as doing an instrument cable, and you can see here it's a little shiny here on the end. I've pre-soldered this line. I'm still leaving this red one totally intact because I'm not going to cut it yet, because I want to cut that one to length because I don't want to expose that much wire here because I don't want to short. I'm then going to clip my DC jack here. I'm just going to open it up slightly because there's a little bit of a crimp on the end of that. If you can see it closely, there's a little crimp right here to help secure the cable a little bit, so you squeeze that around the cable when you're done assembling, but I like to open it up to begin with so it's a little easier to assemble. So you can see here that there's a little tiny hole inside of this 2.1 millimeter connector. I've already tinned this piece here, and I'm going to slide that right through the hole. It makes for a super easy soldering, very secure connection. So I've soldered one side. I'm going to cut off the excess. I want to make sure I have the perfect length going in the center, so I'm going to do a quick visual reference, and then I'm going to insert the end of the cable into the connector and solder. Perfect. So I have both the center and the shield soldered and connected. I'm going to use my wire strippers to just crimp around the cable itself. That's to make it a little bit more rigid. So I've crimped that around. Now I have my housing. That's all threaded, so I can just thread that together. Now I have a beautifully soldered DC power cable. I'm going to finish the rest just like this. Let's follow me over to the board. Alright, so at this point I've soldered all the connections, but now I need to actually apply the power cables to the board. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to start at the back, I'm going to work my way forward, we're ready to go. I'm going to dive in, I'm going to show you how I do one, and then I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the board. So I have my cables already plugged in. I've already made some accommodations knowing the size of my tie-down mounts. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. And I'm going to apply the dots in the direction that the cable's going, so then that way the black cable covers the white dots and just looks like one continuous piece, not something separated from the base of the pedal board. And I'm usually pressing them every so many inches just to make sure that we don't have any cables coming loose. I'm kind of using the back of the pedal board to help line up these zip ties, so when I go through I still have a nice straight line here in the back, but I don't want to disrupt the handle too much either because we need to be able to pick it up. Now I notice here there's a little bit of play in this cable because this cable is already a little bit bent, so I'm actually going to add in an additional tie-down mount so that it keeps my cable really flat. There's no play in it, there's no movement. And I'm making sure that when I dress these zip ties that I have kind of the little nub here on the back end, like on the side of the pedals, so then that way if I'm going to pick it up, there's no chance of me dragging my knuckles across it. Alright, I'm good. I got a nice straight line here. So you can see here we have a nice beautiful line. It's coming out of the boost. I'm using the edge of the aluminum to go straight across. I'm then connecting up the Hall of Fame with the same zip tie here, and then they're both feeding into the power supply to their respective power outputs. I'm going to continue doing the same sort of pattern to the rest of the pedals, get everything coming into this power supply really beautifully, and then we'll go to audio. Alright, so we're totally done with all the power. I'm going to give you a quick little preview of that. We have it all going into the G-Lab power supply. We're now going to work on audio. If you want to solder your own cables, I'm going to link to a video that I did about how to solder patch cables just like this, and you can use that to help you. But I'm just going to go right into it, solder these cables up, and get into the playing and testing of the rig. So this is where we left off for today. I got all the power run, so I'll go into that G-Lab power supply. I got most of the audio runs complete. You can see that there's 2 extra cables that are not terminated. That's because I got a tuner coming in right here. But the one I received was supposed to be the black polytune, but I received the white polytune, so I'm waiting for that to come back in so I can mount that right here. So the tuner's arrived, we have everything we need. I'm going to label up the board, I'm going to get everything dialed in, label up the power supply. We should be ready to test this thing in a few minutes. Everything is looking really good. Let me show you the back. Looking really clean. All went in super nice. We have everything labeled on the G-Lab so we know what's going to what. I've also labeled our interface. So we have the guitar in, amp 1 out, amp 2 out, which is ISO'd. I have 2 trimmers on the back of this so that you can trim out the output of amp 1 and amp 2. I also have right here a polarity and a ground switch, which are a push button. Just for kicks, let's see what it weighs. My guess is maybe 15 pounds, maybe a little less. Let's see what we got. All right, we're at 0. £10, 11 ounces. All in, that's great. So this is gonna be super travelable. Let's see if we got some signal here. Moment of truth. All right. I got a Les Paul plugged in. I have all the tone and volumes at 10. I'm going through a Princeton reverb. So here it is right now. It's on, between 5 and 6. I've got it unplugged, so you can kind of just hear the noise the amp is producing. Almost nothing. We're gonna put in the board now. Literally almost nothing. The guitar is on full volume. We don't have any pedals on, of course, but pedals will add gain. But just the quality of the signal path with nothing engaged and everything running through. And of course we have the buffer in the Vertex boost. There's also an output buffer in this interface. We have ostensibly 0 noise being added. So this is just to show that if you do this right and you use the right types of connectors, this isn't just me, this is using the right quality material, this will get you a result where you can use any number of pedals and really get a extremely quiet amp. So we know that we have the pedal board working. We don't really know the particulars if there's any issues with any pedals. So I'm gonna go through all of them, make sure that we're good. We wanna catch a failure here, not once it gets to the customer. So we're gonna go through, test it all thoroughly. Let's see what we got. So that's a wrap. We finished the pedal board, we reinterpreted Robben's original rig. All the pedals are the same, interface is the same. Check out the links in the description below. That's gonna give you everything you need to build any rig you'd want. Whether it's this one like Robben's or something totally different, you're gonna have everything. Please comment, like, ask questions, give us feedback. We will see you on the next Rig Doctor. I'm Mason, sayonara.